Have you ever watched someone be completely invisible in a room full of people and thought to yourself, that's the one who matters? That's exactly what happened the night Leonard Brooks sat alone at table 19. "Daddy," the whisper came from somewhere near his knee. "When do I get a new mommy? I'm scared of dragons." Leonard did not flinch. He had learned. 5 years of being the only parent in the room will teach you that. The most important thing you can do when a child says something true out loud is to not flinch. He crouched down slowly, both knees, all the way to her level. His hand moved behind her ear. A quarter appeared from nowhere. Noelle's face went through wonder, then delight, then the absolute conviction that her father was the greatest magician alive. All of that. "In about 2 seconds, let's turn that dragon into a butterfly," he said softly. "Your kindness can make anything beautiful, even dragons." "Mr. Magic Dad!" She grabbed the quarter and ran back to the flower girls. Leonard straightened up. His knees reminded him he was 35 and spent his days on concrete. He picked up his glass. Fancy grape juice, more or less. He looked around table 19, the table near the kitchen door, the one that smelled faintly of reheated rolls. The table at every grand wedding where they put the people they had to invite but didn't quite know where else to put. He told himself he was fine. The way you tell yourself the furnace noise is probably nothing. The Grand Harbor Hotel had chandeliers in the bathroom. Leonard knew because he'd spent 17 minutes in there earlier, pretending to check his phone, avoiding a man in a $4,000 watch who had asked him twice what he did. Leonard was a facilities technician, janitor, if you wanted plain English. He kept things running. He fixed what broke. He showed up. His cousin Danny was marrying the niece of a Meridian Tech Publishing board member. That explained the guest list. Senators, investors, a woman near the ice sculpture who'd been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. Leonard had looked her up once, the way you look up a comet, aware it exists in a universe adjacent to yours, not quite in yours. He hadn't planned on speaking to her. What he had planned was to eat his chicken, keep Noelle's flower girl basket upright, leave before the second round of toasts got sentimental in ways that made him think about Elena, about the morning she left. The note on the kitchen counter, written on the back of a grocery receipt. Noelle asleep in the next room. He had a system for evenings like this. He'd been running it for 4 years. It worked fine, most of the time. When Noelle came skidding back across the parquet floor, one white ribbon undone from her braid, basket swinging. A woman in pearls at the next table looked at Leonard with that expression he knew well. Equal parts admiration and pity. The single father look. He'd learned to smile past it. He crouched down again, met Noelle's eyes. "Daddy!" She grabbed his leg with both arms. "When do I get a new mommy? I'm scared of dragons." The quarter, the trick, the laugh that filled her whole face. When he stood, a warm voice came from just behind him. "You look like you're planning an escape." He turned slowly. A woman stood a half step back from the crowd, untouched champagne flute in hand, a dress that probably cost more than his car and his rent combined. She had the posture of someone who had been the most powerful person in every room they'd ever entered for so long that it had stopped being something they thought about. Sabine Langford, in person. She was quieter than her photographs. "I'm not," Leonard said. "I like it here." She looked at him the way people rarely looked at Leonard Brooks. Not with pity, not with polite softness. She looked at him the way you look at something you're still trying to work out. "You're the only man here," she said, "who isn't pretending." His phone buzzed at 8:47 p.m. The babysitter. "So sorry, car trouble, can't make it tonight." He read it twice, looked at Noelle. She was attempting to teach a groomsman how to curtsy. Sabine had read the message over his shoulder. Not rudely, just close. She set her champagne flute on the nearest tray without looking at it, turned to face him with the calm of someone who has made larger decisions than this before breakfast. "Pretend I'm your wife tonight," she said quietly. "Just for one night. I'll handle the rest." Leonard opened his mouth, closed it, and that was the exact moment Noelle came skidding back. She looked up at Sabine with enormous, serious eyes. "Daddy," she announced, to the surrounding tables, "is she my new mommy?" A photographer 3 feet away raised his camera. Leonard took Sabine's hand, slowly, carefully. Her fingers closed around his. His hands were rough, the knuckles thickened, the palms calloused from years of carrying and fixing and holding things together. She didn't pull back. She squeezed his fingers and whispered, "By morning, no one at this table will pity Leonard Brooks." Neither of them understood. Not yet. That one evening of pretending was about to dismantle everything they thought they knew about who they were and what they actually needed. Keep listening, because the next hour will change far more than either of them bargained for. If a kind, hard-working man like Leonard, overlooked for years, suddenly caught the attention of a billionaire CEO, would you trust it? Or would you think, something's not right here? Drop a yes or no in the comments. I read every single one. They were surprisingly good at it, not in a practiced way. In the way two people are good at something when they're being honest about parts of themselves and letting the rest blur softly at the edges. Sabine introduced Leonard to the room's heavy hitters with easy confidence. Leonard, Facilities Director and Structural Systems Lead at Meridian. Her voice carried just enough weight. The man with the $4,000 watch stopped smiling the way he'd been smiling earlier. Leonard didn't correct her. He shook hands. He answered questions about load-bearing retrofits. Because, as it turned out, he actually knew the answers. The investment consultant from Atlanta frowned pleasantly. "You don't seem like a corporate type." "I'm not," Leonard said. "I fix what breaks." Sabine glanced sideways at him. Something moved across her face. Brief, like a window opening and closing in the same breath. They danced once, slowly, near the edge of the floor where the light was amber. Sabine moved carefully, like someone who'd learned ballroom at 14 for the right reasons and had stopped enjoying it somewhere around 26. "You're exhausted," Leonard said. "I'm always exhausted. People see the title, they don't see." She stopped. "The person underneath it," he finished. She didn't answer, but her hand, which had been resting lightly on his shoulder, settled just slightly more firmly. The smallest possible weight, barely noticeable, and somehow the most honest thing she'd done all evening. Leonard told her about Noel, about the first year after Elena left. Noel was 18 months old. He was learning to braid hair from a YouTube video at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. About burning the first 3 batches of birthday cake because nobody had ever told him you had to grease the pan. He'd gone to the grocery store at 9 at night, paint-stained jeans, boxed mix, a can of frosting. Came home and tried again. Noel ate it with both hands and declared it the best cake in the world. Sabine laughed, a real one, surprised out of her. Did she know it came from a box? She was too, Leonard said. She thought the box was part of the magic. At 10:30, Noel was fighting sleep with every atom of her body. Up in the suite, Leonard tucked the blanket under her chin. Fold at the top, not too tight, the way she liked. He pulled one last quarter from behind her ear. "The butterflies guarding the door," he whispered. "No dragons tonight." Sabine stood in the doorway, still, the way people stand when they've seen something they hadn't expected to need. "You're a better father than most men I know," she said quietly. Noel stirred, opened one eye, pointed at Sabine with a tiny finger. "Miss Magic Princess," she declared, and fell asleep. Sabine's hand came to rest at her collarbone, just there, gently, the way people do when something has caught them completely off guard. It was just before 11 when the elevator alarm sounded. A flat, insistent drone from the floor below, then a muffled impact. Leonard was in the corridor, heading back from the vending alcove with 2 bottles of water. Noel always woke up thirsty. He'd learned to stay ahead of it. He found the maintenance panel in under a minute, popped the manual release with the focused ease of someone who's done this in the dark more than once. Had the car moving before the hotel staff finished finding the service key. Sabine stepped out, hair slightly askew, breathing deliberately even. 3 hotel employees stood behind Leonard, looking at him with the expression of people who've just been quietly outperformed. "You're not just someone who maintains this building," she said. Her voice was steadier than her eyes. "You are the only person here who actually solves problems." Leonard handed her one of the water bottles. "I brought two," he said. "The other one's for Noelle." Something in Sabine Langford's face shifted, something that had been held at careful distance for a very long time. 3 weeks later, Sabine called him into her office and told him about Stanley Reed. She said it simply: "The way you say something when holding it has become heavy." Stanley, her COO, her colleague of 20 years, had blocked Leonard's promotion 3 separate times. Forged emails placed into the HR system. Employee demonstrates insufficient commitment due to family obligations. 3 filings, 4 years, all fabricated. Leonard sat very still. "I'm removing him from the company," Sabine said. "He's been with you 20 years. "Yes." She met his eyes. "He has." Leonard thought about those 4 years. The late nights preparing for interviews that never led anywhere. The drive home each time. Noelle asleep in the car seat. Him staring at the road. Telling himself the furnace noise was probably nothing. All those quiet evenings of being passed over for a reason he was never allowed to see. Because the real reason was locked in a file he didn't know existed. He hadn't expected this, any of this. The Catskills retreat invitation arrived on a Thursday, an author's weekend, Aeneas Winters headlining, mountain air, the kind of conversations Leonard usually only overheard from hallways. Noelle was welcome too. He started packing her butterfly hair clips and Mr. Buttons the rabbit, who always traveled. His reservation disappeared by Friday evening. No explanation. A system error, they said. Sabine called directly. "The presidential suite has 2 bedrooms. Bring Noelle." "Sleepover with Daddy and Miss Magic Princess," Noelle announced to the refrigerator. That night. A bad dream woke Noelle at 2 in the morning. Leonard held her in the low light until her breathing slowed. He became aware, gradually, that Sabine was beside him. She'd heard, had come quietly. The way people do when they've stopped pretending they aren't paying attention. Her hand brushed his. Their faces were very close. The room had that particular stillness to it. Noelle opened both eyes and looked between them. "Is the dragon back?" she asked. They both pulled back at the same moment. Sabine exhaled. Then, softly, "I'm beginning to understand something about you, Leonard. About why the people around you seem steadier, kinder, without quite knowing why." He waited. "It's because you don't perform it," she said. "You just do it." Outside. The Catskill Mountains were dark and enormous and quiet. The kind of quiet that makes small things feel important, but there was something Sabine hadn't told him. And by the following night, someone else would make sure he found out first. The dinner with Aeneas Winters was warm and unhurried, the way autumn evenings in the Catskills tend to be when you let them. A log fire. Candles in mason jars. Pine and wood smoke drifting through the cracked window. Noelle was asleep on the love seat in the corner under a borrowed quilt. Her hair fanned out in every direction, her butterfly hair clip hanging on by one tine. She always slept like she meant it. Aeneas Winters was 61, silver-haired. She had the kind of eyes that had read enough of other people's lives to recognize a real one when it was sitting across from her. She watched Leonard pass the breadbasket toward Sabine before she'd asked. She watched Sabine turn slightly toward him when he spoke. Small things. Unguarded things, the kind that don't lie. "You two remind me of the best marriages I've ever written," she said. "The ones where the people don't have to try, they just are." She assumed they were already married. Neither of them corrected her. Sabine touched Leonard's forearm, briefly. The candle between them moved in the draft. And Stanley Reed. 2 tables away, a glass of red wine in his hand, and an expression of careful neutrality. Saw it. His jaw tightened by a fraction, his hand closed more firmly around the stem of his glass. He had always been observant. That was what had made him so useful for so long, and what had made him, in the end, so dangerous. Noelle woke at 9 long enough to request a magic trick involving a sugar packet and Leonard's left ear. declared it satisfactory, and fell back asleep with the sugar packet in her fist. Leonard returned to the suite alone just after 10:30, mountain air cold and clear. He pulled out his phone to check the weather for Noelle's planned morning hike. She'd been consulting him about it since Tuesday with the seriousness of a small expedition leader. There was an email, no subject line. The sender's address was a string of random letters and numbers, the kind of account you create when you need something done and don't want your name on it. Attached, photographs. Him and Sabine at dinner in the amber light, her hand on his arm. The way she'd been looking at him, which, seen now from the outside, was unmistakable. The wall was down, had been for a while. He just hadn't let himself name it. Below the photographs, one line of text. Did she tell you about the bet? Ask Sabine about the Dartmouth wager and how much she stands to collect by getting you into her bed. Leonard stood in the cold mountain air for a long time. He read it again, not because the words changed, but because he was giving himself the chance to find a way they meant something other than what they said. He didn't find one. He had always told himself the furnace noise was probably nothing. Tonight, he couldn't make himself believe it. He knocked at 10:52. Sabine opened the door in a robe, her hair down, a manuscript in her hand with margin notes in 3 colors of ink. She took one look at his face and stepped back without asking, because she had learned, in the weeks since that first evening, to read the pauses. He showed her the phone. The color left her face. Not guilt, something older and more complicated. The expression of someone watching a fire they believed was long extinguished flare suddenly back up. Was I just your $50,000 bet? His voice was level. That was almost worse than if it had broken. Leonard. A wager at Dartmouth, getting an ordinary man into bed. That was a stupid, thoughtless joke between 2 19-year-olds at a party. She didn't fumble. Stanley and me. The year we met, saying the kind of careless things young people say when they think cleverness and cruelty are the same thing. I never collected $1. I never intended to. I hadn't thought about that night in 15 years. She stepped closer. He is using it now because it is the only thing he has left. Leonard was quiet. He blocked your promotions, Sabine said. Before he could ask, I know you want to understand why, not just the what, the why. She pressed her lips together. You didn't do anything wrong. That was exactly the problem. You were becoming someone I respected. Someone I kept turning to without quite realizing I was doing it. Stanley noticed before I had words for it. He's been trying to manage the situation ever since. The fire in the small hearth had burned down to coals. Outside, the mountain was dark and entirely still. Leonard knew the difference. He'd always known it. The way you learn to read sounds at 2 in the morning, between a person protecting themselves and a person telling you something they'd rather not. Sabine wasn't protecting herself. She was watching him with the same direct, steady attention she'd had since the evening she'd stood behind him at a wedding and said, "You're the only man here who isn't pretending." She was telling the truth. He knew it. But knowing something and feeling it all the way through are 2 different things. They always have been. I need some air, he said. She nodded. She didn't ask him to stay. He left before sunrise. He packed quietly. Noelle's animal crackers, her butterfly clips, Mr. Buttons. He slid a note under Sabine's door. Family matter. I'll be in touch. Not quite a lie. Not quite the truth. The best he had at 5:30 in the morning. Noelle, half asleep in the back seat, asked why Miss Magic Princess wasn't coming to the hike. She has to work, Bug. Noelle thought this over with great seriousness. We should leave her something so she doesn't feel sad. He drove. The mountain road was black and silver in the early light, patches of frost catching the headlights. He made himself drive carefully. He always did when Noelle was in the car. That was the thing about being someone's whole world. It kept you steady even when you didn't want to be. Sabine drove back 2 hours later. The black ice sat at the bottom of the long curve, the one with the guardrail that had needed replacing for over a year. The replacement request had been filed. It had also been quietly moved to the bottom of a maintenance queue by the same person who managed that division's budget approvals. She would learn this detail later. She would sit with it for a long time. Her car struck the ice and left the road. She was conscious long enough to understand what had happened. Then she wasn't. For 3 days. Leonard stayed away, not because he chose distance, but because the hospital's policy was clear: family only. He was not family, not on any form, not on any record. He sat in his apartment in the evenings, holding a coffee mug Noelle had given him for Father's Day. "World's okayest dad," in large letters, presented with enormous pride. He watched the news without watching it. He called the hospital twice, got the same answer twice. On the morning of the 3rd day, Noelle climbed up beside him on the couch. A sheet of construction paper, 4 crayons, absolute certainty about what needed to happen. "I'm making a magic card for Miss Magic Princess," she said. "Magic fixes things, Daddy." Leonard watched his daughter draw a butterfly, lopsided, glorious, crowned, determined, and felt something in his chest open quietly. Not break, open. The way a window opens when the room has needed air for a very long time. But what Sabine would tell him when she woke up would change everything. Because what Stanley had done was far more dangerous than forged emails or a manipulative message. And Noelle had already packed the lemonade thermos for a picnic in the exact place where it was happening. Noelle stood at the foot of the hospital bed in her yellow daisy dress, the one she wore when she wanted things to go well. She held up her magic card with both hands, a butterfly, large, lopsided, crayon orange with green spots and a small crown. Because Noelle had decided at the last minute that magic butterflies deserved one. On the back, in Leonard's handwriting, because Noelle had dictated every word. "This butterfly guards your door. No dragons allowed. Get better quick. Love, Noelle and Daddy." Sabine looked at the card. She looked at it the way you look at something that has arrived in a shape you weren't prepared for. A nurse who had been on the floor for 2 days said quietly that she had never seen the patient's numbers settle that smoothly without medication. Leonard thought there was probably a clinical explanation. He also thought maybe there wasn't. Sabine laughed, involuntary, surprised, the same laugh he'd first heard at a wedding when she was still a stranger. Her eyes were wet. She didn't turn toward the window. That was new. The Sabine he'd first met at table 19 would have turned away. She held the card against her chest carefully, with her uninjured hand. Then she looked at Leonard. "I need to tell you something," she said, "while I still have the nerve." He pulled his chair closer. It came in pieces, the way true things do when someone has been afraid to say them. Stanley Reed had been falsifying environmental compliance records on the Meridian Green campus project for 14 months. The eco headquarters on the Catskill Bluffs, the flagship development, the one Meridian had built its public reputation around. It had a structural drainage problem. The original survey had specified a particular type of channel system for the hillside. Stanley had ordered the spec downgraded in the revised build plan. The cost savings moved into a line item that made his division's quarterly numbers exceptional. The drainage channels were never built to standard. The consequence: if left unaddressed through another full wet season, the hillside above the valley would become unstable. The risk wasn't hypothetical. The geotechnical warnings had been filed and buried. Real workers had submitted safety concerns, 3 separate incident reports from subcontractors, written and signed and handed to Stanley's office over 18 months. All of them suppressed. Sabine had found the original engineering file 3 weeks ago. She'd been assembling the evidence quietly, carefully. The way you move when you know the person you're building a case against has been watching you for 20 years and knows your habits. When the accident happened, Leonard went very still. "The picnic," he said. She closed her eyes. "Yes." He had planned it 2 weeks back. Noelle's idea. A Saturday morning in the meadow below the campus bluffs. The blanket from the hall closet. The cardinal thermos with lemonade. The chocolate chip cookies with sea salt on top. Sabine was supposed to meet them there. He had confirmed it with her the week before the retreat. He looked at the window. The November light was flat and pale and even. "She's safe," Sabine said, reading his face. "Noelle is fine. You're both here. Because you came back early. Because you left. Her voice was very quiet. "I couldn't let it end that way. I needed you to know I was telling the truth. Not for any professional reason. Just because you deserved to know." He sat with that for a moment. He thought about the anonymous email, about Stanley. 2 tables away at a candlelit dinner, watching Sabine touch his arm and deciding it was time to use the one thing he'd been saving, 20 years of friendship. And what Stanley had kept in reserve was the most precise possible way to make an ordinary man doubt the one person who had ever looked at him clearly. That was the real cruelty of it. Not the forged files, not the suppressed safety reports. The cruelty was in the calculation. The understanding that the fastest way to undo Sabine's trust in Leonard was to make Leonard distrust Sabine first. Stanley had known exactly which door to lock. He'd had a key made for it long ago. The legal process moved forward the way justice does when the documentation is thorough and no one is willing to carry the liability. Sabine's team filed the environmental violation reports, the falsified sign-off records, the diverted funds, the 3 buried subcontractor complaints. Within days of her discharge from the hospital, the board met on a Wednesday. By Thursday morning, Stanley Reed's name was gone from the company's organizational chart. Leonard heard about it on a lunch break, sitting on an overturned bucket on level 3 of the parking structure, eating the sandwich Noelle had helped him pack that morning. Peanut butter, too much jelly, a cartoon dinosaur sticker on the bag, because she liked him to have something cheerful at work. He read the notification, finished his sandwich, sat in the fluorescent quiet for a while. He thought about 4 years of forged email sitting in a system he'd never been allowed to see. He thought about the picnic blanket, still folded in the hall closet. He thought about a paper dragon trap made of toilet paper tubes, kept on a shelf for 6 months because a 5-year-old said the dragon was caught, and he believed her. The furnace noise, he thought. It was never nothing. It was never nothing. Sabine was still in a soft brace for her shoulder when she called him. She was sitting in the parking lot of her physical therapy clinic. "The inside too bright," she said. She needed air. "I've been practicing," she told him. "Practicing what?" She described, with careful precision, an attempt to produce a quarter from behind her own ear. She had studied his technique from a short video she'd asked him to record before the retreat. She had attempted it 11 times. On the 12th attempt, the quarter launched sideways across the kitchen and landed in Gloria's soup. Gloria wasn't pleased, she said. Leonard laughed, a real one, from somewhere low and unguarded, the kind that surprises you by arriving. He hadn't laughed like that in a while. "Noelle will teach you," he said. "She's better at it than I am." A silence. The comfortable kind. The kind that doesn't need filling. The kind you only have with someone you've stopped performing for. "I want to say something I've been working up to," Sabine said. Her voice was quiet and certain. The voice of someone who has made a decision and intends to hold it. Kindness isn't weakness. I knew it as a concept, something you say in a speech, nod at, move on. You made me know it as a fact. The way you know your own address, or the way your coffee tastes. A pause. "You changed the way I wake up in the morning." He waited. "I don't want you to pretend to be my husband anymore," she said. "I want you to be my real one." Leonard looked at Noelle's latest drawing on the refrigerator, a very large butterfly sitting on top of a castle, with a quarter floating in the air nearby. He'd asked about the quarter. Noelle had said it was just there. Some things, she'd explained seriously, are just there. He thought about table 19, about a rented suit and a coin behind a little girl's ear and 4 years of paperwork he was never supposed to see. He thought about rough, calloused hands, and someone who didn't pull back. But before he could answer, there was still one thing left to build, and Noelle already had very specific opinions about where to put the slide. They started slowly. That was Sabine's word for it, and Leonard respected it the way he respected anything she said with that particular quietness. The quietness of a decision already made and already kept. Slowly meant coffee before work on Tuesdays, a diner near the Meridian office, the kind with laminated menus and a pie case cycling the same 4 flavors in a rotation so reliable you could use it to mark your week. The waitress was Dot. She called everyone Hun. refilled your cup before you'd finished asking, and did not treat Sabine Langford any differently than she treated the electrician at the counter or the retired schoolteacher in the corner booth. Leonard thought this was the best thing about the place. Sabine discovered she liked real cream in her coffee, not the powder she'd used for a decade, because someone told her it was practical. Practical, Leonard said. I have made a number of decisions based on what was more practical. How'd those work out? She looked at her cup. Dot, she called, could I get a little more cream? Dot, already halfway across the room. On my way, hun. There were hard parts. There always are when two people have come to each other from very different distances. Leonard didn't pretend otherwise. Neither did Sabine. The public dimension was one of them. A billionaire CEO and a facilities technician. The photograph from the wedding had circulated on its own. Noelle's face looking up at Sabine with those enormous, serious eyes. The internet had formed its opinions without being asked. Leonard found it uncomfortable, the way private things feel when they become public. Sabine handled it the way she handled anything requiring courage, directly, without waiting for it to get easier. There was no press statement. What there was, quiet. In the next HR cycle, drafted with input from Leonard and the facilities department director and the company's family leave consultant, was a new set of policies: flexible scheduling for employees with caregiving responsibilities, on-site childcare at the main campus, emergency family leave that didn't require 3 layers of supervisory approval, a formal review of promotion decisions over the prior 5 years, with personal status factors removed from consideration going forward. Leonard read the memo on a Thursday morning in the break room. Ricky from the loading dock was beside him, coffee in hand. Huh, Ricky said. That's actually useful. Yeah, Leonard said. It is. He folded it and put it in his back pocket. He kept it for a long time. The legal process surrounding Stanley's environmental violations moved steadily, if not quickly. Meridian issued a public statement acknowledging the falsified compliance records and the suppressed subcontractor safety reports. The company committed to funding the full geotechnical restoration of the Catskill Bluffs. Not a patch, not a minimum standard correction, but the original drainage specification the survey had called for. Built correctly, built completely. Leonard was asked to lead the maintenance oversight team for the site work. The facilities director who reviewed his personnel record, the real one, stripped of the forged entries. 4 years of actual evaluations and solved problems and filed incident reports. Said plainly that this was someone who should have been in this role 4 years ago. He said it twice. The second time, no one had asked. Leonard drove to the site on a Tuesday in early December. The ground was frozen, the Catskill sky enormous and gray and clean. He stood at the edge of the bluff and looked at the valley below. He stood there for a while, just looking at the distance between where he was standing and where the meadow was, where the blanket would have been, where the cardinal thermos would have sat in the grass, where Noelle would have been running with her shoes off, because she always took her shoes off the moment she reached any patch of open ground. Then he went to work. The playground was Noelle's idea. She had been developing the design for 3 weeks, working through several architectural revisions, with Leonard providing quiet structural guidance when certain features exceeded reasonable scope. The final plan included a slide, 2 swings, a dragon tower, her term, non-negotiable, appearing in every version of every drawing, and a sign she intended to paint herself reading, "No real dragons," with a butterfly, because even friendly dragons needed to understand the rules. Sabine reviewed the drawings on a Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, tea at her elbow and going cold. With the same focused attention she brought to anything she considered important, she approved the Dragon Tower without hesitation, and contributed one detail Leonard hadn't thought of: low benches along the perimeter, angled so that adults sitting on them were always facing the play structure, always facing their children. A small thing, the kind of small thing that only occurs to someone who has started paying attention to what people actually need. They built it over 2 weekends in January. Leonard, 3 members of the facilities crew who showed up voluntarily, and Sabine, who turned out to be capable with a socket wrench and did not complain about the cold. The employees' children arrived on a gray Saturday morning, and Noelle conducted the tour with the authority of someone who has been waiting for this moment and would like it done properly. "This is the Dragon Tower," she announced. "The dragon lives here now. He became a butterfly dragon. He's friendly, but the sign still goes up." One small boy nodded with great seriousness. Another asked if they could climb it. Noelle considered this, then said yes, but carefully. That evening, as the last of the families packed up and the January light went soft and low, Leonard and Sabine sat together on the bench nearest the sandbox. Both tired in the good way, the way you're tired when you've spent yourself on something that will still be standing tomorrow. The new swings moved slowly in the cold air, creaking the comfortable creak of things built solid and true. "You didn't just fix the site," Sabine said. "The crew fixed the site." "You know what I mean." She leaned her shoulder against his. "You changed the way people here think about who is worth paying attention to. That starts with you. It started the night you sat down at table 19 and didn't pretend to be anything other than what you were." He watched Noelle explain the butterfly dragon to Charlene from accounts payable, who was nodding with the full and undivided attention of someone who has decided this is the most important briefing she has received today. "I just showed up," Leonard said. "That," Sabine said, "is everything." And what happened 6 months later on a beach in the Hamptons? Noelle had been planning it for 11 days, and she had not told a single soul. Except the refrigerator. 11 days is a very long time when you are 5 years old and carrying a secret. Noelle had shared it only with Mr. Buttons the rabbit. The refrigerator. Reliable. Consistent. Never repeated anything. And once, briefly, with Dot at the Tuesday diner, because Dot had been pouring extra whipped cream at the exact moment the secret had become too big to hold alone. Dot had listened, set down the whipped cream and said, "Hun, that is a very good secret. You hold on to it a little longer." Noelle had decided Dot understood magic. The Hampton estate sat at the edge of the beach, the way old houses do when they've been there long enough to stop being impressed by themselves. The June morning was all light, the kind that comes off the Atlantic in long, generous sheets, makes everything feel, briefly and completely, like the inside of a snow globe, safe, luminous, still. Gloria had opened the house the day before and left blueberry muffins on the counter without being asked, the blueberry ones specifically, because she had learned that Noelle had strong opinions about muffins and that honoring them cost nothing. Leonard had spent the morning with Noelle on the beach, teaching her to find sea glass. It required patience and a willingness to inspect every pebble. Noelle had both in full supply. "This one," she said, holding up a piece of clouded green glass, ocean-smoothed and warm. "Good eye," Leonard said. "What was it before?" He turned it over. "Probably a bottle, something broken that the water made beautiful." Noelle studied it for a long moment, then tucked it carefully into the pocket of her yellow daisy dress. "Okay, Daddy," she said, "it's time." He looked at her. She looked back at him with the calm authority of someone who has been patient for 11 days and is ready for things to proceed. "It's time," she said again, firmly. She had the balloon, red, round, negotiated from Gloria that morning with the focused politeness of a child who has learned that adults respond well to please and eye contact. She carried it with great ceremony up the beach to where Sabine sat on the old wooden stairs, coffee in hand, watching the Atlantic do what it has always done, move and be still at the same time. Patient and enormous, and entirely untroubled by anything happening on shore. "Miss Magic Princess," Noelle said, in her most formal voice, "Daddy is going to do a magic trick. You need to pay close attention." Sabine looked at Leonard over the rim of her cup. He held up both hands, empty, the classic opening, then reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, the pocket Noelle had accessed 2 days ago and made him solemnly promise not to investigate. From it, with the practiced quiet of a man who has been making a little girl's face go luminous since she was old enough to look amazed, he produced a ring. Small, simple, a single warm stone. Chosen because when he'd held it in the jeweler's hands, it had felt like telling the truth. Not presenting it, not performing it. Just the truth, in a form you could hold and keep. Noelle let go of the balloon. It rose in the June air, red against blue, and she pointed at it and announced, "Dragon into butterfly," with the deep satisfaction of a person whose plan has arrived precisely where she intended it. Then she folded her hands and waited. Sabine looked at the ring. She looked at Leonard. "I've been practicing," she said. Her voice was steady and not quite steady at the same time. Both things equally true, equally honest. "I know," he said. "I'm not very good at letting things be real." She stopped. "At believing they're allowed to stay." "I know that too." He was still holding the ring, steady. "You've been getting better." She laughed. The real one. The one that crinkled the corners of her eyes, surprised out of her. The one he had first heard at a wedding when he was sitting alone at table 19 in a rented suit, telling himself the furnace noise was probably nothing. The laugh he had, without consciously deciding to, been quietly protecting ever since. "Yes," she said, simply, completely. Noelle, who had been waiting for that exact word with the focused patience of someone who plans ahead and follows through, launched herself between them with both arms wide open. "Daddy, now I really have a mommy!" Leonard caught her with one arm and held Sabine's hand with the other. The three of them stood there in the June light on the old wooden stairs above the beach while the Atlantic kept moving the way it always had. Patient, enormous, completely untroubled. The same as it had been the morning before and would be the morning after and every morning that followed. They planted the tree that afternoon, a young red maple, at the restored edge of the Meridian Green campus, where the Catskill Bluffs were now stable. The drainage channels ran clean, and the hillside had been given back to itself. The valley below it was safe. The meadow where a picnic blanket never got to be spread out was green and open in the late summer light. Aeneas Winters drove up with a bottle of something celebratory and a card that said only, "I knew." She hugged Sabine for a long time and told Leonard he had the face of someone in the final chapter of a very good book. He took it as the compliment it was. Gloria stood nearby in her yellow cardigan, a little apart from the small group, watching with the quiet satisfaction of someone who has known the right ending was coming and has simply been waiting for everyone else to arrive at it. The maple was young, its roots taking their first hold in the dark mountain earth. Sabine's hands were in the soil. Leonard's were too. Calloused, rough. The hands of someone who fixes things and shows up and stays. Noelle patted the ground with both palms, firmly, completely, with her whole small self. "Grow," she told the tree. "You'll like it here." This story reminds us of something quiet and true. The people who show up without fanfare, who fix the broken things, tuck the blanket in just right, carry the extra water bottle because someone small might be thirsty. Those people are rarely the ones who get thanked first, but they are almost always the ones who matter most. If you are reading this and you feel unseen right now, next Saturday morning, call the grandchild who lives closest. Ask them to come over and help you make cookies, the old recipe, the chipped red Pyrex bowl, no mixer. Let them make a mess. While the cookies cool, tell them one true story about a person you love who is no longer here. Not a sad story, a real one. That is not a small thing. That is exactly how kindness travels, from one pair of hands to the next, outlasting everyone who doubted it would. You don't have to be a billionaire to change someone's world. You just have to show up. This story was written from a human heart, with a little help from AI. Its only purpose is to whisper softly to you, hold on to kindness, believe in beautiful things. Because even on days that seem completely gray, life is quietly preparing little miracles just for those who refuse to give up.